Good evening. Welcome to Your Mental Health Matters, brought to you by ONV. My name is Crystal Kelly, and I am your host. All right, ladies, we are back for part 2. Human trafficking is what we'll be discussing. But first, we would like our guest to introduce herself to the audience again.
Okay, I'm Tammy Crane. I'm the founder and executive director of 410 Ministries here in Fort Wayne.
Yes, welcome. Thank you for coming back here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes. All right, so last time we got into what human trafficking is, the components, but tonight I really want to get into a little bit more deeper in human trafficking. But before we get into that, Miss Tammy, could you give us the definition of human trafficking again, please?
Sure. Human trafficking is when someone is, where they use fraud, force, or coercion for either labor or sex acts.
Okay.
But if it's done to, those do not have to be present if the individual is under 18. If they're under 18, then it's automatically trafficking, and you don't have to prove in the court system that those components were a part of the recruiting or whatever.
Okay. All right. So that's the definition. So let's get into this industry. As we had said before, this is a $1 billion industry. And I guess the first point I like for all of us to kind of expand on is, why is it a $1 billion industry? Like, what makes it a $1 billion industry? I know that the number one industry is drug trafficking, and human trafficking comes in too. So whoever wants to take the lead on that one.
I'll touch base on that, and then you guys can fill in as well. And I didn't know it was still ranked number 2. I thought it was number 1 as far as the human trafficking. And the reason why is they feel that a human body is more accommodating than, and you can use it more often than one hit of a drug. So basically, one human body can make thousands in one day, and you can keep using that same body versus when you sell a drug, that drug is gone, then you have to keep doing that over and over. Whereas you don't have to have as many bodies to make money, you know. And then if you guys have more to that, that's the way I understand it.
Well, people are willing to pay a lot of money for it. I mean, that's part of the other thing. I mean, what buyers are willing to pay for a sex act is shocking.
Very much
But
so.
I've also heard that it's not only about the sex. With human trafficking, it could also be fetishes that somebody may have, or
being in company
hard
of others.
labor, that they can use them for more than just the act of sex.
Right, for escorts, different events.
Yeah,
and
to
what
make
have
them
you. Yes.
more money.
That's true. That's very true. So what or who is feeding into this industry? Let's talk about the buyer. Who would you describe as the buyer that is feeding in the money, pumping in the money into this
Your
industry?
everyday person. And it is not like the grummy looking person that's on the street.
That's
it can
right.
be an everyday individual. It can be school, workers. I hate to say that, but
Just being real.
I am just being real, because they do have, the history of individuals that are in schools, at churches, and it's unfortunate that those are places where our kids tend to open up for trusting individuals, So I would say a common individual, and it can be women just as well as men on the predator side as well as the victim side. So we need to make sure that our audience is listening into that and knowing about that, and then also getting your history on that or your information on that, because we tend to gear it towards protecting the young girls and the young ladies, and we're not really talking much about it as far as the young men when they can be victims as well. And what comes along with that, and I don't want to be too long, but what comes along with that, or sometimes comes along with that, especially with the young people, is they get them addicted to different drugs. So then that's another issue. So it's a a bigger social issue than what we're talking about and what we think, especially in this area of Indiana,
Yeah.
Ohio, and Michigan.
Very true.
Also, the LGBTQ,
Yeah. That's a big one too.
they are targeted. I hear stories, especially when you talk about the men, because a lot of times men don't want to talk about
Very true.
that part, or that, men don't get raped. I'm a man.
That's right.
That'll never
on.
happen. But more and more women are being used from very young, and they're grooming them.
That's right.
So they can get more. They know what to look for.
more-
They know what the signs are. If
That's
they're
right.
depressed, if they're running away from home,
That's
if
right.
they have an addict or something, they know what to the telltale signs.
So you're saying that, and we have to talk about the vulnerable children, the ones that are neglected in the home, the ones that are in the systems.
Right.
Those are easy targets for risk factors.
And I want to get into that here in just a few minutes, but I want to continue to focus on the buyer. I mean, the audience, I want you guys to understand that it could be your next door neighbor. It could be a deacon in your church.
Come on.
It could be the pastor. It could be
The mayor.
a teacher. Again,
I
what you
did.
just said, Miss Tammy, I think people have an idea of what a predator is supposed to look like. But no, they are your everyday people.
Everyday people.
And that's scary.
The
Right?
bus driver that picks you
Yes.
up to go to school, the
Come
Sunday
on.
school teacher,
Yes.
the priest
Family
that you
members.
confess.
Because
That's
that's
a
another
big one,
thing
too.
too. With family members, we tend to say, "Oh, give so and so a hug," and make kids do that, and we shouldn't always
Thank you.
do
That's
that.
right.
And if a kid's not comfortable hugging whoever it is, then don't force it upon them, because it can easily be a family member that's trafficking your child or getting them involved with that.
Yeah. Very true. Miss Tammy, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, sadly, when they've done studies to look at who most often buys sex, it's married white males from the middle class.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
that.
And most people wouldn't think of that
Yeah.
as being the predominant buyer of sex in the United States. But that's the truth. And when they look at those men, they realize that a lot of them don't want to continue doing what they're doing. They've become an addict
Yeah.
to sex. And so they really would like to stop. But just like drugs, it's an addiction. And so they need treatment for that. They need help with that sexual addiction. They're not going to just be able to stop it because it's very strong.
Yeah.
So when you say that, how many of those individuals, by percentage, I guess, are prosecuted for that?
Unfortunately, there's when you look at the amount of trafficking that's going on,
Right.
and then the percentage that actually gets prosecuted, I don't know the exact percentages, but it's very small, and that's an issue. But one of the things they did here in Northeast Indiana is that if someone is arrested
Right.
for buying sex, the court can order them to therapy
Okay.
for their sex addiction, and it's trying to reduce that demand for sex. So there's actually movement trying to create anti-demand
Okay.
for that, and part of that is to help some of those men get the counseling that they need.
Yeah. And we had talked about the gateway to human trafficking, sex trafficking, and would you say pornography is a major gateway into this industry, getting into this industry?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pornography is a big thing. I know a lot of people, men, children, we got to educate. And that brings me to our next point is the population that is vulnerable are the children. So I want to read some things that I have found, just reading off some facts that I think everybody should be aware of. Young children as young as 12 years old are being trafficked. due to their age and due to being innocent. You know, they are very vulnerable, and they're not going to speak up. You know, especially the ones that who are homeless, that don't have parents are paying attention to them, who dealt with trauma. You know, and so I want to kind of get into that population. And I think that's like the middle school age, right?
Yes.
Whoever want to jump into that.
I think we touched on this the last time, but
Right.
that middle school age is a critical age, a vulnerable stage, because they are trying to identify as to who they are,
Right.
you know, kind of away from parents. Even if the parent is at home or both parents are at home, that's just the age where they start to separate and find their own identity. And if they don't have good self-esteem or a good set of friends, and you don't have to have a whole lot of friends, but maybe
Right.
one or two best buddies or what have you. And if you're mostly a loner, that is a risk factor, because you're going to have those predators looking out for that.
That's right.
Because they're going to look out and say, hey, I'll be your friend. I can get you what you need
Come on.
that you're not getting at home. And that's how they start grooming them, by buying them gifts, spending time.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, but that is the critical stage, is that middle school age.
So parents, what are warning signs? What are signs that as a parent, as a caregiver, that you guys should be looking out for when it comes to your children, your grandchildren, nieces, nephew, whoever? So potential warning signs, and I'll read a few on here. Signs of physical abuse, such as burns, marks, bruises, or cuts. Unexplained absence from school. Inappropriate dress, being more sexualized in their dressing. Overly tired in class or unable to keep up with their studies. Being withdrawn, depressed, distracted. Bragging about making lots of money. 12, 13 years old and you got $500 on you. Like, really? And here's a big one that a lot of people may not be aware of. Okay, so this displays expensive clothes, accessories, shoes, new tattoos.
New tattoos?
New tattoos.
I didn't hear that one.
Right. So, it says often used by pimps as a way to brand their
to mark 'em.
victims.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
That's a real thing, and that's scary.
You mentioned something for parents to look for, and
Right.
that's like self-harm, which burning, and having experience in that, a lot of times they hide it very well. So one of the things that I learned was, if we're on the beach and my daughters were wearing hoodies,
Yeah. Oh,
that's a problem.
that's an 80-degree
You
weather.
know, it's 80-degree weather and they don't want to wear shorts.
Right.
That's a problem.
That's a problem.
You know, then I'm looking into their rooms to the extent of, you know, if you ask my daughters, to the extent of taking the doors off their hinges.
Right.
Because you never know with self-harm, you know, suicide in Indiana is huge.
That's right.
You know, so we want to be mindful of that.
Come on, that's very true.
So.
Very true. Anything else you guys want to add to that, Miss Tammy, when it comes to particular warning signs or things to look out for?
No, I think you really named a lot of them, because in that grooming process, a lot of times they're buying them expensive gifts and they're taking them places. And so I think the warning factors that you listed are pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk about the characteristics of a trafficker or a John, is what some of them are called, or pimps, right? Some things I'll read off here. Jealousy, controlling, using violence. They are much older than the female or male counterpart. Promise things that seem to be too good to be true. Is vague about their profession. Oh, wow, here's a good one. They take time to learn about your child. Let me repeat that. They take the time to learn about your child's weaknesses, the things that they're struggling with. They are a listening ear.
Right.
Encourage victims to engage in illegal activities to achieve their goals and dreams. May not become sexual or forceful until trust is built.
So with
So
that,
Yes,
you
go
said
ahead.
you said a couple of things. One of the things is a listening ear, but with how we are in the age of technology,
Yes, come on.
it doesn't even have to be buying them as long as they're spending time with
That
them.
attention.
Quality
That
time.
attention. Yeah.
You know, even if it's on the computer, they could be talking to, they think it's somebody their age, and
yes.
it could be
That's
somebody
what's
Come on.
70
That's
years
scary.
old.
Yeah.
But because they're taking the time to learn
Yes.
about them, they're scrolling their social media outlets, they're seeing who their friends are.
Come on.
They're visiting their friends' pages. What do they like?
That's right.
And that's how they get to our kids, because they know somebody who knows somebody, because they've been prowling after
right.
them.
so it's always getting back to the parenting and the parent being in tune with the kid well before the middle school age. So giving them the hugs they need, giving them that emotional support
That's
that they
right.
need, and and it's just really simple things for the foundation of that relationship with your child. That way, when they do get to that age of middle school, they have something and someone to fall back on.
That's right.
Being available to our kids, you know, even when things are getting tough, which they will in middle school,
Right.
because that is a difficult time. However, if that's established early on,
Right.
it'll be much easier for them to come to you or another trusted adult, you know, in the family.
Come on.
I have a question. What if it's the parent that's doing it?
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And
Well, and that can
it
be the
happens.
that
case.
happens, because I remember you
Yeah.
saying that
Yeah,
before,
absolutely.
that it's sometimes it could be a parent, and I know we want to
has some
love on our
struggle.
kids,
Yeah.
show them love, but
Right.
what if it's the parent? How does that child, how do we empower that child to say it's okay to
Yeah.
go to another adult?
Come on.
Go to someone you feel safe.
That's right.
Someone who doesn't make you feel like
That's
this.
right. That's right.
Because parents can make the child feel guilt.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
That's a
love
real
you.
thing.
Yeah.
This is what mommies do,
what-
or
yeah.
this is what daddies do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love you. This is how I show you love. And wrong love doesn't mean it's love. You know
Come
what
on.
I'm saying?
And that takes another adult in that child's life, whether it's the teacher or an extended family member or a
Sunday
member of the
school
church.
teacher, yeah.
It takes another adult to have an eye for that
Yes.
or a feel for that when kids either look a way of trying to reach out or cry out, because they may not say it all the time.
They say it through their behavior.
Right.
Right,
believe
right.
that.
Through
Yeah,
acting out.
absolutely. Right.
And then if you notice that their behavior has changed
Come on.
drastically, it doesn't hurt to say, hey, is everything okay? Is there anything you want to talk about?
Yeah.
And building that trust that way. And then hopefully adults will take the time to learn the kids and be able to help them.
The issue with that is nowadays, I mean, I hate to be the
Trust-
the,
trust-
the pesty,
I
is
know.
that, you know, parents don't want to be told or want to get involved, or I shouldn't say parents, adults
Right.
don't want to get involved with other people's children.
Yeah.
You know, as
Yeah.
a leader in my church,
Right.
in my community, I've told a child, you know, don't do that, and here comes the parent ready to
Oh, yeah.
fight.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So it's hard to empower someone to have a keen eye or an ear to help when some of us are scared that this parent's going to shoot us. People are
So the-
so aggressive
Very
when
true.
it comes to things like that, that it's like, okay, what do we really do?
So what we have to think about, though,
Right.
is on this panel and on most social medias with adults, kids are not listening to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So
that's true.
mostly the adults that are listening to it, the most that we can do
Yeah.
is give them the information and the tools to
Yes.
at least identify it.
Yeah.
And if they feel that that child is in danger, they have the 800 numbers
Come
that they
on,
can call.
that's right.
Versus going right up to them and say, hey,
That's
Yeah.
right.
you know,
Yeah.
and accusing, you know, the parents or what have
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
hopefully the adults, you know, that are listening, that are involved with kids or around
Right.
kids can do that and identify and try to help that child, because a lot of kids are not listening right now.
That's true.
So
And that brings me to our last point of how can we help? How can we show up? How can we give people tools when it comes to this particular topic? Miss Tammy, I know you brought up some really great points the other night about getting this into schools, educating teachers, administrators, because that's the thing. Kids are there 8 hours in a day. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's their job. So to be able to get that much information on a day-to-day basis, it has to start there as well.
Yeah. And Indiana has come up with curriculum that's called What Would I Do?
Right.
That are taught in some school systems. I do not believe that it's in Fort Wayne community schools. And I don't believe in like Northwest Allen County.
Right.
Like the Allen County system, I don't think that any of that is being taught yet.
Okay.
It just brings in testimonies of other kids and situations that should alert red flags, and then they kind of stop it and say, what would you do? What should you do in this situation? So it's kind of helping kids understand that grooming process and red flags and those kind of things. And then what do you do? Where do you go if you're alerted to that? And I just remember one time when my daughter was, this is going to age me because it was instant messaging, which was that was back in the 80s, but
a long time ago.
She was doing instant messaging, and all of a sudden she starts getting these messages from supposedly like rock star type person,
Famous
and it
people.
starts out so innocent, like, what's your favorite color? And what, if I came to Fort Wayne, would you come see me? And she, fortunately, she showed it to me. And I was like, honey, I don't know. I have a hard time believing this. And then she talked to one of her teachers at school, and he was like, this is what you do. Call them out on it and see what happens. And immediately that site went down. It just disappeared. Yeah. So, there was an instance where even back then they were already starting to, and it starts out so innocent.
Yes.
Right.
It starts out really innocent.
So we getting ready to wrap up. Again, this is great. Just being able to conversate about what this industry is about, because a lot of us don't know. A lot of us don't want to know. I mean, let's be straight up. And that's why we're bringing it to the forefront. And so, again, understand what sex and human trafficking is all about. Understand that your children are endangered. I mean, they are at risk of being trafficked. And then also just know that there is help. As our show here, being able to reach out to Miss Tammy through 410 Ministries. I mean, we are out here to help and support. So I definitely want to encourage anybody who know any child or an adult that is going through something like that. There is a hotline, the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And I want to share that right now. And that's 1-888-373-7888. Again, let me repeat that. Human Trafficking National Hotline is 1-888-373-7888. So, Miss Tammy, I'm going to give you this opportunity to present for next Saturday.
Yes. Okay. And before we do that, we're going to ask Miss Other Tammy a little bit more about her program real quick, and then we'll go into the announcement for next week as we close up.
Perfect.
Okay.
So right now we reach out to women who dance in the adult entertainment industry, providing them with trauma therapy of different kinds when they're ready for that. Just becoming a good friend, a healthy relationship, and then sharing our faith as they're interested in that. But because of the burden for the trafficking that goes on, our long-term goal is to open up a 2-year residency program for women who are recovered from trafficking, and focusing on drug rehab, because we know drug addiction, alcohol becomes an issue with that. And so working on that, working on their trauma therapy, teaching them job skills, job readiness.
It's a long journey to recovery.
It is a very long journey. because they've been abused in so many different ways. And so it is a long journey to begin even that healing process from all that trauma that's there from childhood all the
Right.
way through their trafficking.
Thank you
All
for
right.
sharing that. Miss
Well,
Tammy?
Miss Tammy, thank
Yeah.
you for coming.
Yes.
Thank
Again,
you.
and I'm sure we'll have you again at some
Most
point.
definitely.
Yes. So to close up, we're going to give you the announcement for the Human Trafficking Awareness event, which will be going on next Saturday, February 25th at the Boys and Girls Club here in Fort Wayne. It starts at 2 p.m. The last day for registration is tomorrow, which is the 18th, Saturday, February 18th, I'm sorry. And that includes your meal as well as the guest speaker, who is Miss Kia Vawar. I know I did it wrong again.
all right.
However, she's coming from Texas, and she'll be sharing her story of survival from the human traffic underworld. So please, if you can make it, please go on Eventbrite and register by tomorrow, which is the 18th. And again, it'll include your meal, the guest speaker, as well as vendors around the city for resources. So thank you for your time.
Miss Mildred, as we always say,
Always protect your mind.